We want to welcome everybody back to In the Music Room, and our special friends Bobby Smith and Dorinda Duncan. And Helen, this has just been fun tonight. We had some. It wasn't fun back in the back where we had a lot of malfunctions, but it was sure fun hearing these songs by these two
Some of
cool,
them
cool
twice.
people. But yeah, but that's okay.
It was great.
That's okay. Welcome, guys. So good to have y'all.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate that. We really appreciate what you've done here with the music room. It's just a wonderful idea, and you guys are
It's a vision.
wonderful.
Just
You know,
a
you guys,
vision.
you guys have come to shows here and just really become friends. I mean, we're just instant friends, and your hearts, and just the people you are has struck out to me and to Helen and to everybody here. And then when you come in and start telling us, "Oh, we got songs too," I'm thinking, "Oh yeah, hell yeah!" You know? And then we end up over at your house one day not too long ago and got to know you all a bit and visited, and now we're going to bring everybody into that.
That's right.
Okay.
And we're so absolutely glad that we could get you before you make your journey on to the Carolinas and relocate.
And we're going to talk about all that. 'Cause
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
fixing to move from Dallas to the Carolinas. That's the reason we're taping the show early and releasing it there on the 8th of May, 2019,
Yes.
2018. And I think the best place to start would be, let's just start at the beginning with both of you. Where are you guys from individually?
I'm a native Texan.
I'm from a northern province of Cuba called Miami, Florida.
Never heard it put that way, but that's good.
Now, Dorinda, you were raised in Dallas? Or where?
I was an I was an Air Force brat, and so we were just here in Texas in between assignments. But I started my dad's one of his. When I got to Florida, we were stationed at Homestead Air Force Base, and then right after I got out of high school, I went to work in Miami, singing with the Briarwood Singers.
And we talked about that before. Tell everybody about that, because that's quite an experience.
Oh yeah, I think one of the most interesting things about that, that was a folk group, is that the young man that got us all together and produced this and worked with us, we worked literally 8-hour days refining our harmony. And at the time when folk music was a big deal and everybody get up in kind of stringy hair and sandals, and I thought it was cool.
Hootenanny,
You know,
hootenanny.
hootenanny,
Yeah,
hootenanny,
oh, yeah.
that's
Oh,
right.
absolutely.
This guy wanted us in suits and ties and little Peter Pan collars and jumpers, and so honestly, when we first got up on stage, there were some major chuckles to be heard because we just looked so goofy, but our harmony was right on, and it was a five-piece group with Stan Beach playing banjo, Barry Monroe was our rhythm guitar, Bob Hoffman was another rhythm guitar, and Harry Scholes was on an upright bass, and and I was the only girl, and I didn't play an instrument at that time, so I was singing all the top part harmony.
Well, your voice is your instrument.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
First instrument, I guess.
Actually, she did play an instrument prior to that. She played ukulele.
Oh yeah,
And she's got
baritone.
you got to tell them the song of your television debut. I mean, you've got to tell them
Oh.
about your television debut.
That is kind of a funny story. I had written a little song I was playing it on my baritone uke. I was living in Orlando, and they
How old were you?
I was 14, I guess, and they called me to do a live program and just interview this little talent and that was in town, And I remember I wore this slim little skirt and this little jacket, and I was as they were talking about the news during the day, the crew over there, they had me up. They were sitting me up on a 4-foot platform, and I was getting all adjusted and settling around with my guitar, and just as the time they said, and now, ladies and gentlemen, we are so happy to have Miss Dorinda Duncan. Right at that moment, I took one last thing, and all the camera saw was me going over the back of the thing. My legs splayed in the air. The guitar.
And this is live.
And this is live, and the guitar bouncing on the concrete.
Oh no!
But I
You
got
violin,
right,
was it, or
and
guitar?
one of the guys came running over and said, "You fell very gracefully." I could hear them chuckling like, "Oh!"
Oh, I would have died.
That was my entrance.
Bobby wasn't behind the chair pulling on it. Not to the
No,
best
it's
of
just
our
a
knowledge.
little girl.
Yeah.
So tell us about you, Bobby. Give us a little history of Bobby.
Yeah, I grew up in Miami. My father was a carpenter, and I used to cry because I wanted to go to work with him, and then I cried because I had to.
Uh-huh.
So that's one skill
Yeah.
I got, and then when I was 15, maybe I got a guitar for Christmas, and so I started playing that, and then I ran in. I went to high school, a special high school, kind of a magnet school,
Mm-hmm.
study electronics, and one of my classmates was in a band, and in Miami at that time, this sounds unbelievable, but in Miami there were only about 10 rock and roll bands in all of South Florida.
Wow.
And Charlie McCoy and the Agendas was one of them. He that's where he's from, the harmonica player. And so, and a couple of them had an upright bass because electric bass wasn't, really not a lot of people
Right.
played it. So I mean, we're talking early now. So anyway, I through my classmate, I wound up. They asked me to join their band, but they said you're going to have to play bass, So, but it was just an amazing experience because these guys were very solid. They were young kids. We were 16, but they were really together. And I think it was at a time in my life where I really needed that kind of a model, So it was, to this day, I'm very blessed. And we have reunions to this very day.
Mhm.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and they're just, they're just wonderful guys. And so,
What kind of songs did you all play?
well, we were doing rock and roll, early rock and roll. But the lead guitar player, his father was a jazz musician, and so he grew up listening to the 40s jazz and everything. So he played all these. He really was an accomplished, player and knew, chords and stuff that. So we did the rock and roll, but then when we did the slow stuff, we were doing Moonlight Vermont, Misty,
Nice.
really sophisticated stuff when we did the slow stuff.
Yeah.
And so it was just a great start for someone who was just a kid that didn't know. I had very few formal lessons, and so I just started playing. And so we played for, I played with them for 3.5 years. And I mean, we would open up. We would go and play, like for instance, Bayfront Park Auditorium, and they had the doors were locked, and then we would be, tuning up and everything, and the kids would be outside, and so they would open the doors, and these kids would run to the stage, like a rock and roll band.
Yeah.
So I mean, things were
different.
very different. I mean, look at the Blues Brothers, and they got chicken wire to keep people from throwing bottles at them. So it was a different thing. So very, very a good experience. And then And then so I played my first bar when I was 16. This is hysterical. I was my father in particular didn't want me playing in bars because I was doing teen dances every weekend. And then so I started playing and we started playing in bars on the summer because we wanted to make money, you know, for the school year and everything. And so it was a really rough thing. And I said, this is a nice little local bar. You'll see. Just come and watch, and you'll see it's a you know, not a bad environment. So they came, and so I'm playing and singing, and this woman, she was out of her mind drunk. She comes and she rubs her face on, you know, hands on my face. She says, "Well, you sweetheart," you know, and I'm going, "Oh gosh."
Right in front of your parents.
Get away from me. Please get away. My parents are out there. Get away, get away. She says, "Well, what's wrong?" And I says, "For one thing, my parents are sitting over there." She turns around to the whole bar and goes, "Oh, his parents are here."
Oh, no.
Oh my gosh. So anyway, they didn't bother me anymore. I guess they figured I could handle it. But
After that?
yeah, so that was the young years, and then I started playing bars, you know, with different groups, and
How did you get into the studio business?
well, before that, I joined the second generation of the band that she was in. It was called the Briarwood Singers.
Right.
It broke up because one was going to be an airline pilot and the other one, you know, that kind of thing happened. But then they reformed a few years after that, and then I was in the second generation of the Briarwoods, was the Briarwood Singers.
Gotcha.
I mean the Briarwoods, not the Briarwood Singers. And so that's when I met her, and I worked with her for 3.5 years. We had 2 shows a night. We did Radio
It was a
City.
show group. It was 6-part harmony, and we always had 6-part harmony.
Yeah, it was like we did
really
like the association.
Beautiful work.
You know, heavy vocals. We did Requiem for the Masses, and we did all. You know, it was pretty sophisticated, and she was the darling of the group. I mean, she gets in front of an audience, she smiles, and everybody just, you know, that's it. Everybody, you know.
Well, I always had so much fun. Yeah.
We did Radio City Music Hall. We did Dom DeLuise show. We did you know, different showrooms. In Canada and so that's when we met. And then that group broke up. I probably were more responsible for the group breaking up because I thought, you know, we weren't writing songs, and I just couldn't see, you know, I couldn't see myself doing these shows night after night. I wanted to make records, and so to answer your question, I had an electronics background, and I was a musician, so I thought, you know, I'm gonna open a recording studio.
When did
In
you,
Miami.
So
Yes.
when did you actually get the bug for writing songs? That's for both of you.
In my case, I really wanted to be a writer, you know, more than anything else.
Right.
And but I wasn't particularly good. I mean, you know, she doesn't believe me, but you know, I wasn't what I would thought was a good writer or anything, but I was trying, you know. And so
You were writing.
yeah, I was
That's the
writing,
key.
and if there's anything I could say about that, it's a craft, and like any other craft, you have to practice it. So I just wrote relentlessly after a while, and then you know, I mentioned in the performance earlier that I hooked up with Dion and the Belmonts, and he came in my studio to do a demo for Word Records because he was doing gospel music, contemporary Christian music, and so that's when I met him. And then about a year later, I had written some songs, and I had a dramatic conversion experience, and so he started doing the songs. He did 3 of them, and then I wound up on the road with him. And that's when, but that's really when I became a songwriter, as far as
Now,
I'm
at
concerned.
that point in time, though, y'all weren't together.
No, no.
Y'all had separate lives.
Yes,
Y'all on your own
yes.
ways after the Briarwoods
yes.
broke up.
Yes.
Yes, we did.
And
She
then-
came into my
Actually-
studio. She did come in.
Yeah, I came
into my
into his studio.
to do a demo.
Yeah, to do a couple of
Yeah.
demos. That's right. No, actually, he was instrumental in breaking up the great show group we had, but his reasons were sterling. But after that, I had never played I hadn't really played guitar. So when that group broke up, I went to work in a straight job for General Development Corporation, but I went right out and bought a guitar. And one of the old members of the group said, if you learn 10 songs, I'll get you a job.
Mhm.
Yay.
So I went ahead and learned 10 songs and started back to work singing at night to, supplement my income.
Yes.
And
Yeah, she's
you
played
loved-
all
and you
over
loved
Dallas.
singing, or you wouldn't keep doing it. So.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah, it had to be a
Yeah.
part of you at that time.
So when you got that guitar, is that what led you to starting to write your own
Oh,
songs?
of course. Oh, yeah, because yes, I was heavily influenced by Dylan and Joni Mitchell and all
We
even
all
the
were.
old, yeah, all of us. And for a long time, I wrote with that kind of wordiness and things until after I got to know some friends at the University of Miami that were jazz players, and I wanted to enlarge my exposure to that, and so that's when I started also including jazz and a lot of Latin music into my repertoire. It just made me more versatile and more marketable. And honestly, that Latin music just thrilled me.
Yeah.
Still does.
Now, as y'all, what brought y'all together this time?
Yeah.
No, we never dated before. We were just
No,
Right,
friends.
that's what I'm
we-
saying.
our
Y'all
dating-
never dated, but I mean, y'all played in a group together, so y'all were around each other a lot.
Well, for about 3.5 years,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
worked. We were on the road, and then the band broke up, and then she started doing a single, Milwaukee and different places, and then I went into the studio business, and so we really didn't have that much contact, except one time she came in and did a demo at my studio, and so.
Then I moved to Texas.
Yeah, and you moved to Texas, and she started doing a single, writing songs,
Yeah.
and she's played all over Dallas, for years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and she had some success as a songwriter with Charlie.
Yes, I had, right, while I was pitching my stuff in Nashville.
Yeah,
But
we did have an association with Charlie McCoy, because Charlie McCoy produced a record of the Briarwoods, the second
Okay.
generation of that. So, and so that has been in place. And one day Charlie is doing a session in Nashville,
Oh, yeah.
and he's looking at the music,
Yeah,
and it's her song.
it was my song. I thought
And,
that was
you
so
know,
fun.
Yeah,
He had no idea. Oh, that was-
yeah.
But
but then
but you guys
just
end
out
up
of it-
getting together now,
Well,
and
he
y'all are
just
a couple.
called-
Well,
me.
yeah. Well, we each had marriage, another marriage, and in my case, it was a long marriage, about 40 years, and we had a reunion of the Briarwoods.
in Colorado.
Yeah.
And it was great, because what's so fun about that is that all of us, each member, has stayed in music, really active in music, and you don't often hear that when a band breaks up, that.
And real quickly, while we're on this subject, you guys actually, you had talked about it in the other segment, But you guys were actually under contract with United Artists, right? And you got to open for the Beatles.
Yes, yes, it,
I wasn't in that group.
no,
Right, that was the
first
first
group.
generation.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was the first group. We were under contract with United Artists, and it just happened so fast. To be honest, I wasn't really even listening to the Beatles when that happened. I was sort of hung up on Judy Garland. And
Did you wonder when you saw what happened in the auditorium that night? Did you go, wow?
Oh, well, I think I still have the telegram. He says, well, hang on to your hats. I've got you booked with the mop heads.
The mop heads?
And I thought, well,
Okay.
so my mom and dad were there, and oh, it was just a thrilling evening. It was snowing, and it was just wonderful, and they were really just so cool. I think one of the most striking memories I have of that night was that when we opened for the group, the girls in the audience, I mean it, were screaming so loud over nothing. I mean, they were just screaming.
They were there.
And we couldn't hear a darn thing. We were on stage and we had all the monitors we could get. We could not hear ourselves.
Wow.
And so we were just playing by memory of songs that we had remembered and that we were praying that we were in tune and everything. And
Well, the Beatles
And
said
then-
they couldn't hear themselves either.
no.
I got it.
Audience was
No.
louder than they could generate from the equipment at that
No.
time.
That's right. And so I went up into the sound booth when they finally got on, and the girls were screaming again, and I looked, and John Lennon just looked over at Paul McCartney and went like this. Can you believe this?
Yeah, yeah.
Guys from Liverpool, 4 guys from Liverpool. Yeah. Now, let's go back to where, Bobby, you started courting at some point in time here.
Yeah. After, I did. We had that reunion in Colorado, but that was nothing.
Got
There was
reacquainted.
nothing. Nothing.
No love connection.
No.
at that time.
And
No.
but I did call her, and we had a pleasant conversation, and then we had another one, and then another one, and so it was just,
It just
we had
You've got a
connection.
funny look on your face right now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
we
figure
had
out
we
this
had we had a
look.
we had a connection, obviously, with the music, and we
Yeah.
had some
And
history.
we had history
Yeah,
together.
and
But it wasn't
that-
history you were thinking of at that time.
Well-
Come on, Bobby.
No.
Come on, Bobby.
yeah, I mean,
It was nice to go back and talk to somebody who you had known in your 20s.
Uh-huh.
That does something to you, You just you feel like you're back in your 20s again. We knew the same people, and I have to say that the thing that really kept me on that phone was the fact that every one of our friends only had the highest things to say about Bobby. His personality and his integrity and his character, they just all talked about him like that. And so at that stage of my life, I was thinking,
That's important.
that's real important.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not as if there was fireworks going on immediately.
No, we were
we
just
just had
chatting.
conversations and everything, and it just, and so, but eventually it was pretty intense. As intense as you can get over the phone and through email. And that was it,
Yeah.
I mean, that was it. At some point,
10 months.
I proposed to her, and that was it. And then, so we got married. Then she flew to Miami. I mean, that was the extent of our dating.
It was
Email
over the
and-
phone
and-
email.
Isn't that
Yeah, yeah.
bizarre?
Wow.
Yeah, that was it. So, I had a rabbi friend of mine that I was living with at the time, married us, and then I loaded up a truck. I pulled up at her house with 1,200 books, and a complete recording studio, a lot of other stuff, enough tools to build a house or whatever, and you know, can imagine this poor girl. This truck was like 27 feet long, and
And the house wasn't but 26 feet.
it was quite a shock, you know. But
Now, speaking of books, you've got a book that you wrote. Why don't you tell everybody about that? You wanna,
I would like
and I'm going to let you hold this so you can show everybody the cover
I
of
would like to. This is the book. It's called Downline.
650 pages.
Yeah, 650 pages. And the reviews are good. The only two bad reviews I got was from people who stood to lose money because of the publication of this book, because it's a whistleblower novel.
Yeah.
It blows the whistle on an $80 billion a year industry, and so.
But it's really, really a great book.
Where can people get this book?
Amazon.
Amazon.
Yeah, it's called Downline: An Intolerable Potential to Deceive, and that's a quote from a judge who looked at it's the multi-level marketing industry. Sorry out there if you're part of that.
Tell it like it is.
Huh?
Tell it like it is.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
what happened was, remember the downturn in the economy in the 80s. I mean, you know, it just bottomed out, and my recording studio just wasn't doing well at all. So I was having a hard time, really hard time. And my a cousin introduced me to multi-level marketing, network marketing, you know. And so, man, I said, okay, I'll try, you know. First week I made $1,200. That's amazing. And then 3 years later, I'd run my income up to $140,000 a year. And I was working for a company that was located here in Dallas in the Infomart.
Mm-hmm.
So I was making money. It's not, you know, you hear a lot of people that don't make money in that industry, and 99% don't. But I was just one of those guys that
Kept pushing.
that, you know, I hooked up with a guy who was he was a millionaire from that business. He says, you come with me, I'll show you how to do this.
Under his wing.
Yeah, so, but after a while, I couldn't do it anymore. It's a fraud. It's a fraud. And so, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot about a lot about business, and so anyway, that's part of it. But it's much more than a book about blowing the whistle on an industry. It's actually about two families, an Israeli family and a Christian missionary family that meet in Uganda. It's very interesting. So you get a lot of history of Uganda, and then there's two sons of two fathers that a lot of tragedy happened in Uganda, and then the two sons, you know, don't see each other, but then they wind up meeting in George Washington University Law School. Both of them. Yeah, and so and then it gets into the politics. So if you want to know how Congress works, it's in here.
Yeah,
If
did a lot.
Yeah, if you want to know what a fraud this business is, and why it's unethical to its core, you'll find the law. There's a lot of law in the book.
Right.
So it's
and again, it's called Downline.
it's called Downline.
Yeah. So
Not
let's,
An
only a
intolerable
songwriter, but a true
potential
novelist.
to deceive. Yeah, a lot of people are.
I think that you need to get the word out, and just do what we can to help get it out.
Yeah.
Well, I wrote it obviously because I felt strongly about it. I'm part of a coalition of consumer advocates. These are two case law making attorneys and one forensic accountant, and we have done everything we can to try to petition the FCC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and we're still working on it.
Well, let's change stations for just a second. let's also talk about your your new adventure. Y'all got married, you came back to Texas, but now you sold your house and you're moving to North Carolina. Tell us about that.
We're very enthusiastic about singing together and writing more worship music. We're hoping to be able to go to various churches and sing, as many worship groups do.
Mm-hmm.
And
You will be able.
But we want to do house concerts,
That's
not
what we'd
not
like to
necessarily church music. That's not what we
Like
do.
to do both.
Yeah, yeah.
Helen,
We do
Helen
both.
and I always we figure a lot of the things we write about have a Christian lean to them if
Mhm.
they're not a totally Christian
Right.
song. And so we try to take that with us wherever we go. I'm sure y'all do the same.
yeah.
But y'all are fixing to move to the Carolinas. You moved to North Carolina, right?
Mhm.
Right.
And so we want to let everybody out there in that area and all of our friends. We do have alumni out there from in the music room as well as you guys,
Yeah.
and we're going to put y'all all in touch with each other,
Mhm.
and
Oh,
hopefully
great,
that'll
great.
help plug you into that market
Yeah.
out
There's
there.
a big music scene there.
Yeah, there is.
Definitely in
There's
the
always been in that
Raleigh,
mountain
Durham,
area.
Chapel Hill area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where we are.
You know, I didn't know when I moved to Dallas. Until I moved to Dallas, I didn't know that there was a revival of what they call coffee houses. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because my whole orientation was studio, and so I wasn't. And I'd perform from time to time. I obviously performed when I worked for Dion, and I had a rock and roll band, but I didn't know about the coffee house circuit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then I didn't know about these house concerts. I went to one in Miami, and it was a couple of people came, and they did their couple of acoustic guitars, and it was really nice. And I thought, wow, they filled a room with 30, 40 people, and I went, man, this is something. When I got here, I realized, oh my gosh, this is worldwide.
Oh yeah, there is. The house
goes on
concert
everywhere.
series
Yeah.
goes on anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah,
And the
and we
thing-
like that much
All
better.
over Europe
Oh, yeah.
too.
And the thing that's so nice
Huge in
about it is that you're not having to compete with the coffee grinder or with people wanting to hear Freebird or, drinking beer and picking up.
Probably not
Men
going to
and
get
women.
asked for Margaritaville.
Yeah. So the nice
Probably.
thing about it
We
is
know.
that people are really into your music and what you have to say in the lyric, and they pay attention and they're quiet and you touch people, and that's just really a gift to the artist,
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
They're usually a more mature group, homeowners, and so the response has been really good. And
Also, you're taking the music to them.
That's right.
yes,
It's the true troubadours of it's the modern day troubadours. That's what we're having to do as songwriters now, because in the digital age, you got to play live to make money.
mm-hmm.
It's just that simple. You got
Yeah.
to sell your product, and if you're not playing live and you're in house concerts, the difference is you go play a coffee house or a bar or a winery or those type venues. If there's 100 people there, you might sell a handful of CDs. If you go and play a house concert and there's 50 people there, you're probably going to sell a whole bunch of CDs, and that's the difference. So it really is where the money's at for people that do what y'all are doing and heading out to do and what we do, and
Yeah.
Wayne and a lot of the rest of us.
Well, you know,
Talk about Wayne Willingham, our friend over
Uh,
here, mutual friend who's here.
One of the main characteristics of musicians is that they love to perform, and
Got to.
they you can't think about it. You just enjoy. It's not an ego thing. It's just you find when you get in front of an audience like that, the repartee and the conversation just is so bubbly and so happy, and you often find yourself in a situation like that unless you go and you let it all hang out. And you encourage people to sing along with you, and so it's a great way to retire.
Oh yeah. No, we had talked about you guys coming out sometime and flipping the sides of the table.
Yeah,
over
that's
everything.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Something that because Helen and I, we haven't done it in the music room show in.
We've never done one
two-
together.
No, we never have.
Uh-uh.
250 shows or so since
Yeah.
either one of us have done one.
Oh my
so
God.
maybe
Well,
when you guys come back to Texas, we're going to plan it.
Yeah.
yes, and
Okay.
that is specifically this. We're going to be the interviewers, and you guys are going to
That's
be the
right.
performers.
We'll get on the
Yeah,
hot
we'll do
seat.
that. We'll do that.
And-
And you know what? You're about the only people that I'd let do that.
Well, we wish
yeah.
you the best of luck, and we
Yeah.
so enjoyed you this evening. And just keep in touch, and we're going to keep up with you too, and let everybody know what you're up to.
Dorinda Duncan and Bobby Smith, they're the best, aren't they?
They
So much
are.
fun.
Thank you, honey.
Thank you guys
Thank
for
you.
being here.
Well, thank
and I
you.
want to thank the audience that's still in here with us, and the thousands of people that are going to get to listen to this over the next few years up on YouTube. And you guys are in the music room.
Yes. Thank you.